Welcome to the video. My name is Marty Shenkman. This is part of Shenkman Education. The topic of this video clip is broader thinking or mistakes that can be made in special needs planning. There are many families that have special needs beneficiaries, both minor children, adult children, that have needs that need to be addressed. A common approach is to create a supplemental or special needs trust. Conceptually, what that does is it preserves the assets for the, let's just call it child's benefit, because it doesn't permit the assets to be used from the trust to pay for things that state programs, government programs will provide for. So that's why it's a supplemental needs. It only supplements the needs that are already covered by state law. And that's a very important part of planning. You need to get a specialist in the state in which this family is, the child is, because state laws do differ, and they're going to change as time goes on. If government funding is impacted and the programs are impacted, how that's going to be handled will need to be changed. So if you've had this planning in place and a number of years have gone by, make sure that you go back to the specialist in your state and revisit and review the planning. So one of the most important things to think about in terms of special needs planning for a special needs child, is to make sure the documents are current and reflective of the current status of the child, current state law, government programs, and your financial situation. I got a list I'm going to just go through of some of the things that I see often overlooked. One of the and this is an odd one, but it's significant. One of the problems sometimes with special needs planning is the family may not appreciate, especially at a very young age, the challenges a particular child may have. Some families, and this is tragic, are just uncomfortable talking about it and will actually go to an estate planning attorney and not disclose the possible issues or the known issues with their special needs child. That's so important not to do. You need to communicate. Everybody involved in the process, your financial advisor, your insurance advisor, your accountant, everyone needs to understand what's going on, because there can be roles and important steps to take that each different profession can help with. If you're doing some of this stuff on your own because your net worth or your income isn't high enough, you need to think of how to help protect your special needs child from all the different lenses that I just talked about. I've seen some people not do a special needs trust and simply bequeath outright to another well child whatever money they want for the special needs child. So for example, the family has 2 kids. They bequeath everything on the second death to well child and simply trust well child to provide for the special needs child. That could be a tragic mistake. How do you know well child is going to remain responsible? How do you know well child's not going to get sued? How do you know well child's not going to get divorced and have commingled the money? Not a very prudent approach. I understand the point because it's simple, it's inexpensive, and you don't have to worry about government programs getting it because there's nothing in the name of the special needs child. But I just outlined some of the many significant risks that plan could take on. Another concept that comes up in special needs planning, and I'm not going to give you a specific answer, I'm just going to give you the concept. If your level of wealth is very great, you may choose to limit how much goes into a special needs trust for a special needs child. I've seen people limited in ranges from $2 to $5 million. Now, if your estate's well below that, it may be irrelevant. But there's a lot of wealthy people who do have special needs children, and you need to ask the very hard question, is putting more money in the special needs trust going to really help that child, or at some point is there really no incremental benefit to the special needs child from yet more money? And that's really something you want to talk to a special needs attorney, an attorney that specializes in this type of planning, and maybe perhaps a financial advisor that has knowledge of it, maybe a social worker or care manager that can help you evaluate what may be appropriate. For everybody, regardless of wealth level, those concepts are important, because for people with less wealth, it may be critical to buy life insurance so that if you die before amassing more wealth, that there's enough money to both provide something for your well children and sufficient funds to protect the special needs child. Complicated beyond this video clip, but if you have retirement assets, there could be benefits to leaving them in a special trust for a special needs child, Post-Secure Act. make sure you talk to a specialist who understands that and look into that. Another factor I see, risk I see overlooked way too often, is disability of the caregiver. Example, elderly mom is the caregiver for a special needs child with cerebral palsy who's an adult in his 50s. So what happens if mom is disabled? Often, people will, in that position, will get a will or a revocable trust with a special needs trust, if that's appropriate. We're going to come to that. But they don't address the potentially material risk. What if mom is incapacitated? So now you need someone not only to help the child who's special needs, but the mom, the parent, the elderly woman or the infirm woman or person needs to have somebody help take care of them. So it's really important to address that what if. What if the caregiver is disabled? We'll come to it in a few minutes, but you may need a guardian, a successor guardianship appointed so somebody can take care of the special needs child if the caregiving parent or other adult can no longer do so. The caregiving adult needs to think about their planning, which in a lot of cases they don't and they need to, right? So if you have a revocable trust and you have an elderly couple with an adult special needs child, if they're incapacitated, who's next? To name one spouse as the trustee, then the other, isn't sufficient. Maybe you want an institution, maybe you want another family member, maybe you want co-trustees to help out. So don't overlook potential disability, aging, and challenges of the caregiver. Do you want to hire an institution? In more advanced estate planning, it's very common to name institutional trustees on all trusts. For others, it depends on the circumstances, the costs, what the needs are. Just be mindful that if you name an institutional trustee, does that institution have expertise in administering a special needs trust? It's a real specialty. If they don't, maybe you should be interviewing other trustees to see what they can provide. Now, some institutions that don't have in-house expertise on special needs planning may have contractual arrangements with a company that specializes in this. It might be another trust company. That may be fine, but you should understand that, the pros, the cons, and who's doing what. I said this before, but I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to do it both for very wealthy and less wealthy people. You need a team approach. As I said earlier, there could be important insurance implications, right? You may need different life insurance. You may need to maintain disability or long-term care as the caregiver because you're going to need that money to supplement what you're going to use because of the needs of the special needs child. Investment planning may be different. What kind of distributions? How long is the money set aside for the special needs child before it may need to be used? Income tax planning. Special deductions may still be feasible despite the higher standard deduction and limitation on medical deductions. You need to really get all these different perspectives. So on the wealthier side, your accountant, your attorney, your insurance consultant and special needs expert who may be different, all should periodically, once a year, have a web meeting and make sure everyone's on the same page. For less wealthy people, you need to address those same concepts. You may hire one or two professionals, not as many, or hire none, but you still have to look at the planning from all those different lenses. I said it earlier, but it's on my list here. How old are the documents? Laws change, circumstances change, health issues change. Make sure that everything is current. This is not one and done. It's a very dynamic, changing situation. I mentioned it earlier, but it's just here on my list. Make sure that if you have a successor guardian appointed, you may, once the child is 18, need to be formally appointed as the guardian. So if you're married and you have an adult special needs child, you may need to have first one spouse, then the other spouse named guardian, and then name a successor. You need a succession plan. You don't want to have the guardianship lapse because it's only the two of you and God forbid something happens and now a court has to appoint a guardian. Get a successor. Keep in mind that state laws differ. So, if the child is living in one state that's different than the state you're living in, how might that affect the planning? Keep in mind, as a final point, special needs trusts, and we described them earlier, may not be appropriate for everyone. You may have a child with special needs that doesn't receive any government funding or programming. You may be very wealthy and intentionally choose not to. On the other hand, and this is really important too, the mere fact that you're very, very wealthy doesn't mean you don't need this planning, because you may not be able to replicate certain government programs no matter how much you pay. And that's why you really need to talk to a specialist. So just to recap, there are many families with special needs children or other heirs. It's very important that you give them the thoughtful, special consideration for their unique circumstances, your situation, who the caregiver is, who the guardian is, how the finances are being handled. If there's not enough money, looking at insurance coverage on your life to make sure there's money. And even for very wealthy families, this is still critical planning. So please talk to your advisors, deal with this deliberately and thoughtfully. It can make a huge difference. Thank you for joining me. Please keep in mind that all the information on the video clip is for educational purposes only. Don't take any legal action without appropriate professional guidance. For more information, see shenkmaneducation.com. Thank you.